Well, good afternoon. Obviously, this has been a long investigation, a trying investigation for all of the officers, deputies, and investigators here at the Macomb County Sheriff's Office. And as trying as for the family and friends of the 5 boys that were in this crash that we all know occurred on May 8th, about 6:14 p.m. on the Inner Perimeter Road in Stony Creek Metro Park. We know the vehicle that they were driving was a 2008 Jaguar S-Type. I'm going to go kind of point by point of what we know, some of the challenges, and then I'll relay the facts of the investigation as we know it. So this may take a little time. But before I get going, up front here are the investigators that did a lot of legwork, a lot of interviews. My staff, my team that I'm very proud of in this investigation, and I just like to introduce them. We have Detective Renee X, Detective David Crabtree, and Sergeant Jason Abro. So they'll help me out if you throw any questions later on at me that I might not have the answer to, but my job is, and when I'm done here, I think I'll have all the information you'll need. So what we learned through our investigation prior to the crash. We know that Greg Bobchick, who does own the car, picked up Jonathan Manolios after 3 p.m. It was after school. He then went and picked up Emanuel Malaj. From a statement that Greg Bobchick has given to investigators, they went to a party store located in Shelby Township where they purchased some Corona beer. Emanuel Malaj purchased the beer with a fake Ohio driver's license that indicated he was over 21. That license is in our possession, and our investigators have looked at it, and it looks pretty authentic. Joseph Narra came to that location and entered the vehicle at that time. The boys then went to the house of Michael Wells in Macomb Township and picked him up. At that point, they made one additional stop to pick up some pet food for, I think it's the Bobchick's family pet, and they went to Greg Bobchick's house in Shelby Township. At 5:20 p.m., 2 girls, ages 16 and 17, both Eisenhower students, arrive at Greg Bobchick's house. They were all getting together. They were going to go to Stony Creek that evening. At 5:40 p.m., the 2 girls and Joseph Narra leave the Bobchick house in the girls' car and head to Stony Creek. A short time later, Greg Bobchick, Jonathan Manolios, Emanuel Malaj, and Michael Wells leave the Bobchick home and head to Stony Creek. At that time, Jonathan Manolios was driving the Jaguar, according to Greg Bobchick. At 5:50 p.m., they all arrived at Bay Point Beach, and Manolios was still driving the vehicle. Joseph Narra exits the girls' vehicle and enters the Jaguar. Now all 5 boys are in the Jaguar. Both vehicles leave that site and traveling in the same direction on the Inner Perimeter Road. The girls leave the park, and the boys head to Ridgewood Beach. The Jaguar's headed in the wrong direction and pulls into Eastwood Beach to turn around. They leave Eastwood Beach and again head in the wrong direction. Jonathan Manolios is driving the vehicle at a high rate of speed, and per Greg Bobchick, he was giving them grief because, again, they were going the wrong way. As the Jaguar is traveling westbound on the roadway, it almost strikes an eastbound vehicle head-on, causing that eastbound vehicle to take evasive action and leave the roadway. That driver, that witness that we spoke to, estimates the Jaguar was going at 70 miles plus. We know at that time the crash occurred, and our dispatch center received numerous 911 calls. Now some of the challenges that these investigators had to deal with and first responders of the Sheriff's Office. First challenge was the original 911 calls. Many reported calls of bicyclists being hit, joggers being hit. No really concrete information of what was transpiring out there. That left our first responders kind of tasked to figure out what was going on. To this date, we have no independent witness that saw the vehicle leave the roadway, strike a guardrail, and flip over 5 times. At the scene, we had no identification on any of the deceased boys. We did not know who they were for a period of time. One of the troubling parts of this investigation is nobody wanted to talk to us as part of this investigation, which really was troublesome to us. These investigators had to go on out and seek out witnesses that we felt had pertinent information to who was driving the car and what may have transpired. During some of those investigations, witnesses had lawyers with them. Another part was the length of time before these investigators were able to speak to Greg Bobchick and Joseph Narra. Throughout this investigation, and after we met with the families, because it is our job to keep those families up to date on what was going on in this investigation, and we did sit down with them at one point, all of them, and brought them up to speed of where we were at and what we believed happened, is there was many rumors, misinformations that were spread throughout the community. One of those that came out was that 1 or 2 of the boys, at this point nobody knew who was driving as we were investigating, that this was a suicide mission, and that one of the boys, came out twice, the 2 boys that were in the car, were doing this on purpose to commit suicide and taking their friends with them. That rumor was troublesome. That, no truth to that at all. But we followed up on every rumor. Every information that the family came to us with, we followed up on. We had a hard time obtaining the cell phone and text messages to maybe see what was transpired prior to the crash, or if there was any indication of what was going on prior to the crash. As this investigation went, I think most of you either covered it or spoke to the Shelby Township fireman that was off duty in the canoe that responded and went in the water and saved Joseph Narra and helped Greg Bobchick get out. During the investigation, we had a 17-year-old come forward that indicated he was in the water. He was pulling the survivors out. We went back to the fireman. Oh, it was just me. So as you can see, we were having a hard time of really ascertaining what happened out there. It was troublesome to these investigators. Now, again, I'm not trying to spin this one way or the other. It may have been just the magnitude and of the crash and the scene itself that maybe they were not looking forward, but we do believe some credibility of the 17-year-old because he was providing information that these investigators, they would have only known if he was close up to the scene. But again, just another challenge that we dealt with. Another troublesome one is obviously the rumors were going out. We have a public safety personnel that made some comments, and I'm not identifying the community, but this was a public safety professional that made some comments and we felt was pertinent to our investigation. And when the investigators went to go ask him the question, he didn't want to talk to us. How frustrating is that? I made a call to that local government, and I don't know if that individual is still employed. We had investigators at the hospital, large crowds, obviously, with these 5 young boys. They had over 200 people at the hospital. Our investigator had to try and ascertain what was going on. Again, we didn't have identification. There was parents there that knew that all these boys were together. It was just a very chaotic scene in trying to control that. Back here at the sheriff's office, once we started to get an opportunity of identification of the 3 boys that were deceased at the scene, I asked that the family members come back here to the sheriff's office so we could sit down, talk to them, and do death notification. And again, we had a large crowd of over 100 people that did show up at the sheriff's office, and we did sit down and unfortunately, that's part of our job. And as sheriff, I've done this many times as an investigator, but it never gets easy. And as you can imagine, when you tell three sets of parents that their sons are no longer alive. That was very, very tough. These investigators did over 50 interviews to find out the information. Their first interview with Greg Bobchick, that they had an opportunity to talk to him. He provided them information and accounts of what he could remember from the crash. When we think we were just getting a handle on what was going on, we get a call from a family member of one of the boys that was in the car who indicated that while he was in the hospital, he spoke to Greg Bobchick, and he audio taped his conversation. And his conversation had some additional information that he did not tell our investigators. And really that investigation, that information was the fact that when they almost struck the vehicle head on, Greg Bobchick, he told this relative that he grabbed the wheel to avoid the head-on collision. When he spoke to the investigators, he did not relay that information. And of course, we went back and talked to him, and that still seems to be kind of fuzzy in his recollection of what may have transpired. At some point, we lost Greg Bobchick. He's become uncooperative with us at this time. Another incident is Joe Narra, his lack of memory. He suffered a traumatic injury, and what he can remember are very little parts that he has imparted to us, but parts that we believe corroborate what our investigation will reveal. And last is just the parents and the family that we've been dealing with over the past 2 months in coping with this crash and wanting information and want to make sure that they're going to get the factual information. And I'm assuring them today that our office does nothing but thorough investigations, and this is what we're here for today. These are the facts of the crash. These investigators received many calls after this crash occurred, reference individuals who had witnessed throughout the day after school that of a black Jaguar with some young teens in driving recklessly in and around Shelby Township and the 26-mile area. I cannot stand here and say that that was the car because nobody can identify the license plate and nobody can identify who was driving the car. But a black Jaguar with the teens in it kind of fits the description, but it lends some of the driving habits that may have been going on. Okay, you ready? The occupants of the vehicle. Okay. As you can see, through our investigation and the information provided through witnesses, Jonathan Manolios was operating the vehicle. We've said from the beginning Gregory Bobchick was a passenger in the front seat. Greg Bobchick was belted in. He was still in the vehicle when it crashed into the river. We know that Joseph Narra was sitting behind Greg Bobchick. After he left the girl's vehicle, he jumped in on the passenger side and was behind them. What we can't say for definite is that Michael Wells and Emanuel Malaj. We don't know who was in the middle, but we know that those two boys were in the back seat. How did we come to this determination? This determination comes from speaking with both Greg Bobchick and speaking with Joseph Narra, and also speaking with these two independent witnesses, the young girls that were side by side in the vehicle at Stony Creek as they left the park and indicated that Jonathan Manolios was driving the vehicle. As to the vehicle, it is a 2008 Jaguar. That vehicle is registered to Greg Bobchick's mother's cousin, if you followed that. That individual is 36 years old, and he's out of St. Clair Shores, Michigan. We have been informed, though, that the Bobchicks are making the payments for the vehicle and are paying the insurance on the vehicle, and that Gregory Bobchick that was in the vehicle is the primary driver. That is the information we have as it relates to the vehicle. Our accident investigators, they've determined that the vehicle was traveling in the area 72 to 82 miles per hour prior to impact. And if you don't know, that's a 35-mile-an-hour zone there on the inner perimeter road. Post-impact, when it hit the guardrail, is between 60 miles an hour and 70 miles an hour. That vehicle rolled 5 times. We have reported that Jonathan Manolios, Emanuel, Malaj, Joe Narra, and Michael Wells were all ejected from the vehicle. And on that smaller diagram that we have put together, you'll be able to go on up and you will see the locations of where the boys landed as they were ejected from the vehicle. And actually that has been shown to the family members. We went through this already with them. And as I stated, Greg Bobchick was seat belted in the front in the passenger seat. We do know that Jonathan Manolios, Emanuel, Malaj, and Michael Wells were pronounced deceased at the scene. Joseph Narra and Gregory Bobchick were transported to the hospital. We've obtained autopsy and medical records from the hospital, which indicate that all boys in this vehicle had alcohol in their system. The report indicates that Jonathan Manolios, our driver, was a .08 blood alcohol content. Emanuel Malaj was a .02. Michael Wells was a .07. Gregory Bobchick was a .02. And Joseph Narra was a .03. Our investigators and deputies found alcohol bottles in the vehicle. We located backpacks in and around the area with clothing from the boys, and also empty bottles that were located in one of the backpacks. All of this information was given to Macomb County Prosecutor Eric Smith. Eric Smith met with his executive staff and they reviewed all the facts of the case. They reviewed those statements. They reviewed everything that we have done and that we have provided him. It is the prosecutor's ruling that no crime can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in this investigation. Although we, the Macomb County Sheriff's Office, will be submitting a request to our Washington Township Attorney for a minor in possession of alcohol on Gregory Bobchick and Joseph Narra as part of this investigation. This truly is a tragic incident, and again, I'd like to thank our detectives and all of our staff here at the Sheriff's Office that put forth all their time and effort to make sure that we did this job right and we did it thorough. And I hope that the facts of this case and crash can have some closure on those families and friends of all these boys involved. So at this point, we will be closing this investigation